Hi. So, yeah, let's talk about Comic-Con Grande 2019 Legendary. And yeah, I was looking forward for this event. As you know, we've been MIA for for the longest time, and we've been showing up in events here and there, uh, sporadically as spectators because we didn't really have any new stuff we could share. But yeah, me and my friends from Spanton Productions have been wanting to get back as exhibitors, and we sort of talked about it, and hopefully next year, 2020, will be that year. Okay, so Comic Con. Well, as always, this was held at the Bayanihan Center in Pasig, and visiting there once again inspired me to really get back into it. It was sort of like the place where we were, quote unquote, born as comic book artists, and of course we always want to contribute. It's just that sometimes life happens, and you just have to deal with the cards you were dealt, of course. And yeah, this year's Comic Con had a lot of things going on, and there were activities. And should you want to know, sort of like the bullet point version of what transpired during the event, we will be releasing another video at the Spanton channel where you can watch that. And I will be linking that in the description below, as well as I'll be linking it on the at the end of this video. And hopefully, if the video is already finished, I can link it properly, of course. And yeah, there were a lot of new faces, and that's always a good thing. And admittedly, the people that we know and the people from our batches are growing fewer and fewer, but that's not entirely like a bad thing, of course, like famous comiceros like Manik Sabrera will always be like a fixture. Mervin Malonzo, Kong Martelino, Gdesk, Zero Point. Obviously, they are going to be there. They're like a staple now of Comic Con, and it would be weird not to see those faces. But it's always a good indication that there will always be newer things to look forward to in the future, and we welcome, of course, newer artists and creators to the mix, and like old and new and stuff like that. But yeah, as far as like the audience, I noticed honestly that the audience for this event is a little bit thinner than usual, and I'm not sure if you can attribute that to to like small drizzles early in the day. It didn't really rain that hard, to be honest, if it rained at all. But yeah, I'm not sure if that contributed to it, and maybe it felt like bad weather for a lot of people. But I can say that that small group who attended, I felt that they are kind of more passionate than your usual audience, and they are quite more discerning when they're picking up titles, and that's always a good thing because it forces us creators, of course, to come up with more compelling stories and better artworks when we sell stuff on Comic Con. There are a lot of stickers as well, and that's not a bad thing, of course. That's always a good thing that you can have added to to the event. It enforces the fandom. Say if you're a fan of like uh, Hot Dog Prince or Boy Baka, maybe it helps reinforce your fandom if you have like stickers of it that you could put on your binders or notebooks or whatever they do with stickers these days. And yeah, it's always a good thing that that the creators can have more items that they could that they can offer readers and buyers. And I think that has been going on for quite a while. We've seen it happen in other events as well. But yeah, it's a good thing. It's a nice little addition to what's happening. And the guests here are primarily legendary creators like Rico Raval, Hal Santiago the Great, Jess Abrera, Ronnie Santiago, and yeah, of course, there are other guests as well. Sir Ian, the new DI 13 was there. Sir Gerry Alangilan was also there, and I was kind of sad to see him on a wheelchair. It actually surprised me. Not sure how long that has been like a thing already, because as I mentioned, I've been MIA for so long. Probably it's been years, but I just didn't know because I wasn't attending events anymore. Yeah, Mervyn Alonso also showed off his amazing animated version or short of El Arcangel, and that was also a treat. So yep. Um, I only attended one day though, and I did, of course, consider like doing like a 2 day thing. And if it was up to me, I would, of course, like to attend each and every event there is, for comic books because it supports the industry. But sometimes, time restrictions and budget constraints would not be on my side. So I just do my best, at least attend, just one day, show up and grab, a couple of titles from new creators that I haven't heard of. Maybe they're not new anymore, but this is the first time I'm seeing their work. But it's always a treat. And I'm sorry, if if I can't attend all of them, but I try my best. But yeah, going back, let's talk about some of the things that the guests and the speakers discussed. So yeah, so during the first day, Ronnie Santiago had his talk about his experiences in the comic book industry, as well as how Santiago the Great, and how that byline and that moniker came about, and how that actually stuck to him during the lifetime of his career. And another interesting story was that when another artist during his time, actually called him out for not being able to draw believable female characters in his work, and that kind of forced him and challenged him. And the way he approached it was that he went to strip clubs and bars so that he could study like the female anatomy and stuff like that. So that's kind of interesting to know. And but I guess the one of the main takeaways from this event is first, from Sir Gerry Alangilan's talk about his Komiks Museum in San Pablo, Laguna, and how it started. It basically started when he was asking like a younger set of artists, and he was asking about who their influence or inspiration were, for their art. And a lot of the answers that he got was were names of foreign creators, foreign artists like Jim Lee, some Japanese manga artists, or some mangakas, and he very rarely got answers that were Filipino creators from the past, if any even answered one. So he decided that he wanted to kind of address that by making like by curating and making sort of like a museum for a local comic book that were popular in the past, so that we can be educated over history, or the history of Philippine comics, how it started and how it evolved, and how great the artists were during those times, so that maybe in the future, it's not just like every artist would answer Jim Lee or foreign artists as their influence, and they can look into what they did in the past here in the Philippines, how effective their artwork was, and how intricate and how masterful and professional those artists were during the time, and maybe you could be inspired by that. And that always was very interesting for me because I've always been questioning what style we should be going for when we say local art or or Filipino art. I mean, I guess for the Japanese they have like manga and anime, and wherever you see that kind of artwork, you would associate it and say that's Japanese. That's definitely manga. That's definitely anime. And I think it's the same for Western comic books. If you see like muscular heroes and stuff like that, you would associate it with DC and Marvel, and you have your Batmans and your X-Men's and stuff like that. Even for manhwa, for Korean comic books, I know it's inspired by manga, but for some reason, when you see like a manhwa, you immediately associate it with Korean art because I think it's with the way they draw the eyes and stuff like that. But for Filipino art, you don't really have a go-to like a specific style. It always is gonna be varied. Like there are gonna be younger generation artists who would prefer like a manga style, and there would be like a more traditional artist who would prefer like the realism style that is used in Western type of art. Now, admittedly, for the older works, I'm guessing in the museum we would see those kinds of comic book work. Admittedly, for these older stuff, I think they have been focusing more on the style that's more realistic. So you could say that it's more Western in a way. But yeah, we have asked several questions to Sir Gerry, and I asked him um, about if he was planning to or has started to curate like more modern comic books, like maybe Trece and Skyworld or Mythology Class, those kinds of stuff. And he answered that, yeah, and I completely agree with his answer. He answered that for these newer creators, they still have the opportunity to to market themselves and their works through online means or through events. However, these older artists, they have no one anymore. No one's publishing their work anymore, and because most of them are already, well, most of them have passed away, so they can't really market it that effectively. So that's what the museum is for, so that you could look back. It's sort of like a time capsule, and if you wanted to see what they were up to during the time, how great their work was compared to what you're doing right now. It helps inform you of how you should improve or how you should do your work, not specifically copying their style, because so that's a valid point, of course. And when he was asked about the style, like I was discussing a while ago about what constitutes, well, another guy asked this, but I had sort of like a similar-ish concern, and he was asked what would be like the telltale signs, or what would be the things that we would consider to be like an indicator that it is Filipino made art, basing on the stuff that he's curated from the 50s, the 30s, and stuff like that. And he just told us that it actually doesn't kind of matter what style you use, like if it's like a manga style or a Western style, that inevitably the local juice or the local flavor of our culture will inevitably bleed out of the work if you're really sincere with it, if the story calls for it, and if you presented it in a way that that is reflective of our culture, then that's what's more important, and not how you draw the characters. Because admittedly, I have been like in the past, when I was starting out, I was consciously trying to avoid making my works look anime or manga style, or even Western style. Like I tried to avoid it because I sort of wanted to see if we could come up with like an approach that that or a working style or construction style or art style that would be immediately be identified as, oh, that's a Filipino artwork. But yeah, I think he's right. I think trying to do that is, I think that is sort of like a futile, you know, thing to to pursue. I think it's it's a useless pursuit because first of all, like when you see like characters drawn in manga style and you would associate it as like a Japanese person, sometimes it's because they drew it specifically to look like them or they were in a costume. But manga style is really just the only difference is that for manga, they concentrate more on the simplicity of lines. They would try to convey detail in the least lines possible. Like you would see people drawing noses represented with just one line, and it works for the style. And for the Western style, they're more about like musculature and anatomy, and that's the detail that that they are sort of a master of. So sometimes when you try to draw someone in a specific race, you just try to get the likeness. And if you're talking about like the Filipino characters, it's very broad because you have to remember that that Philippines has been colonized by Spain. We've been invaded by Japan, the USA. So people look very different from different parts of the Philippines. So it's kind of really a futile kind of endeavor to to try and narrow it down to specific features, and it might even become like a racist thing or a regionally divisive thing anyway. So the best that you can do is just to try your best to to convey the culture through the story, and inevitably if you do your best, as long as your artwork has the professionalism that it deserves, then the cultural juice or the local flavor will inevitably show in your work. And I think that's a pretty smart answer to it, without dividing the room into like pro manga or pro Marvel or something like that. And anyway, I think that art shouldn't be looked at as like Filipino art or Japanese art. I think art should just be art. You should just be making art. You shouldn't be putting it in labels and restricting yourself in the process and trying to say that this is just specifically ours. I think that art should belong to everyone, and your work should be appreciated and understood by anyone around the globe, whether you're portraying like a Filipino community or character. Your art, if it's good, then it should be something that anyone can enjoy, like universally. Like art should be art. You shouldn't be looking for Filipino art. You should just be looking for art in general. So yeah, that's one of the bigger takeaways from this. And speaking of art, it brings us nicely to the other point from the another talk from Sir Ian Santamaria, the artist behind Kadasig and Skyworld. They were promoting their new book Salamanca during the summit sort of talk or something like that. He said, quote unquote, or maybe I'm just paraphrasing, I can't remember, I didn't really record it, but he said that what is style but the mistakes that you make? And that to me is pretty interesting. I guess that's what the Bob Ross has been talking about when he said, he keeps referring to those happy accidents that you make when you're painting. And yeah, I kind of do agree with it. And he cited like Jim Lee's like style, like it's always like, perfect specimens of human beings that he draws, and it's really great. A lot of artists are influenced by him, including myself, and Sir Ian is also a fan. Um, but yeah, and I think that when despite that, he has his own quirks. Like he draws faces um, very samey, maybe. He has like this formula for faces, and it works because it's his style. Um, if if the character doesn't have like a specific like design, like the Joker or stuff, he would draw it in his own type of style. And he goes on to say, well, Ian goes on to say that just keep making stuff and don't be afraid to make mistakes, and that's how you would find your style. And you could always attribute it to style. Say if you like made like mistakes in the perspective. Now, of course, don't get me wrong. I don't want this to come off like as something that beginning artists would say that who would knowingly draw something in the wrong way and then just attribute it to style. Of course, you should still strive for perfection, but those little nuances in your style that you discover along the way, that that becomes part of your art, and you could call it your own style. So that's one of the more the takeaways that I got from this event, and it's very insightful listening to these people talk who have been like pros in the industry and very much respected people. Oh, and I also forgot, in that event I found out that Ian Santa Maria, surprisingly, because someone asked it from the crowd, he was actually the guy from the Mang Jose music video from Parokya ni Edgar. I did not know that. I did not see that coming. And yeah, I was pretty surprised about it. And wow, this guy is really, he does it all, doesn't he? It's really good. But anyway, yeah, those were the things that I've learned, and it's pretty great listening to people who have like the wisdom that they gathered, from their experiences, and it helps you to frame what you should be doing next or how you would approach things, and it's really great. I appreciate that Comic Con has these talks and these speakers that they invite, because it really enforces creators, and gives you insights on how to think and how to work the industry and stuff like that. And the second takeaway, of course, is that no one really said this, but it's just sort of like a realization for me, that if you wanted to be part of something, then do something to contribute to that thing. So yeah, that led me to the conclusion that it's been we've been gone for too long in the Comic-Con and comics community, and I think we should start making new stuff so that the next event we have something to share with you guys. And if you guys would like, I would document some of that process in this channel. You can subscribe for that, and maybe we can work something out together. You can tell me if if the style is to this and that, or the story is working, or something like that. I'll be doing it anyway, so you can stick around for that, or not. You can just expect me on Comic-Con, or our full group from Spanton. Hey, sorry my camera died earlier, and yeah, I lost a few minutes of footage there, but that's fine. And fortunately, that's that's all the time we have for today. Okay, and again, congratulations to Comic-Con for 15 years of great Comic-Con events, and hopefully for future events we'll have more audience, more people will come in, more people will buy comics, and more people will be doing comics, and hopefully the industry will prosper. And more power to Comic-Con, and more power to everyone, and talk to you guys later. Bye bye.